David Dzergoski of Tidelift. It's great to see you. Thanks for your time today, David. What are you seeing organizations that are transitioning to DevSecOps environments or really building them out doing to make sure that those environments stay flexible, stay adaptable to whatever the needs of the organization are, whatever the needs of the organization's customers are for the software that they're developing? What are they doing to really be able to stay agile throughout the process? Welcome, David.
Thank you. Pleasure. I would say the biggest and most important part in developing a DevSecOps kind of tool set and/or process is understanding what you have in the enterprise today. No agency is devoid of software or processes that they've had in the past. So, looking at what you have, analyzing what you have, and understanding what the mission objective is. So, I've seen a lot of organizations have a couple of tool sets, and you're looking at the mission, there's a big gap. So when moving to a DevSecOps model and looking at your tool sets, you want to look at a comprehensive stack. There is no silver bullet application or data source or tool set that is going to solve all the problems as you start migrating your agency. And you always have to keep an eye on the ball between the technology and the mission objective or what you're trying to solve from a solution standpoint, and make sure they map, make sure the communications part of DevSecOps is absolutely in line with the mission point. What I find historically is a lot of technology people have a capability, but they're not read in on the operational requirements or the mission point objective. So you get a lot of disconnects from a communications standpoint in the organization. Vendor lock is an issue that also pops in. You start getting people that favor certain solution sets, but the mission keeps on evolving. So you also have to look at the flexibility and the evolution as the mission changes, as the funding model changes, and as tools evolve. One solution, one way of doing it, one timeline, one set of communications pathways does not move you forward in a DevSecOps environment. So the tools, the communication, the funding, and the politics all have to be considered when you're moving down this pipe. And if you're not moving on all of those points, you will struggle to have a model that's very effective for your agency.
I want to pick up on the communications piece of that because one of the issues that people bring up time after time is stovepipes and the way that that prevents organizations from moving horizontally when they're trying to move to a DevSecOps environment. Is that a challenge that you've seen also?
Absolutely. It's a challenge in every agency, and it gets more exacerbated when you get into agencies that have a lot of higher level solutions or security levels or CUI information across the enterprise, because you're not allowed to talk across some of those barriers. Yet you're still trying to solve a problem across all of those areas. So I engage with a lot of government agencies and have for decades. And I'm like the universal translator between business requirement and technology. I come in a business suit, but I have striped sweat socks on, so I can talk to the technical people and sometimes help them develop or communicate up the food chain. And some people high up on the food chain, because I've been working with some of these agencies for decades, will talk to them and say, wow, that is great what you're trying to do, but you technically can't get there. This is a process change. This is a people change. This is an education change. And oh, by the way, that X dollar budget you have is not going to get you to your goal. So the communications, both from a financial standpoint, from a function standpoint, and is it possible technically, and then bringing all those points together, talking to all those levels of the organization and coming up with a realistic path forward has been probably something I have done, scared to say, probably hundreds of times in agencies. And when they start listening, they start seeing improvements in the process.
Are there common threads among those realistic paths that you've helped organizations find over time, David?
I would say the ones that start adopting a work group mentality as opposed to top to bottom or bottom up are a lot more successful and accomplish mission faster, lower budget, and wind up having better measurable metrics of success than the ones that still follow I'm going to take this information, I'm going to push it down. They're going to go mess around with it for 2 or 3 cycles, and then they're going to send something back up, and it keeps on going up and down and up and down. And it just extends the cycles. It increases the cyber risk a lot of times. It definitely burns more budget and it burns more cycle times. because no development team I've ever met in the entire federal government across all the agencies ever had enough time to do everything that was on their wish list or their hit list of projects to work on. So as soon as they start getting into a work group mentality, tasks start falling off that list much, much faster, more efficiently, on time, and under budget.
The work group mentality, where does the work group mentality go right and go wrong most of the time that you've seen it?
Right when you get representative people at each level, where it goes wrong is when they invite everybody from every level. Once you get a forum of, I mean, say there's 100 people in an agencies, once that work group gets above 10, you start having problems in communications and translation and over analyzation. There's a phrase probably everybody that's worked in the federal government or has been an integrator, analysis paralysis. We sometimes want to make sure our solution is 100% perfect before we deploy, and that is not realistic. You have to try things, you have to evolve, you have to change and improve things over time. And sometimes, you have to fail little, not fail big, fail little so that you can make the improvements necessary.
A lot of organizations in government, particularly DevSecOps organizations like software factories and so on, are talking about failing fast. Are you seeing the change actually happening, or are we still kind of in the accepting that it's okay for that concept to exist in government phase?
I mean, you have to fail to succeed. It's inevitable. I would say forward facing, I would say the Navy is probably upfront from a software factory standpoint more than the other parts of DoD specifically. They fail, they recover, and they have a great remediation process, and they learn, and they have use cases, and they have best practices that evolve from those failures. And then right behind them is probably the Air Force, the same kind of adoption. We fail small, we don't fail big. You fail small, you get lessons learned, you don't do it again, and you push forward. And that's accelerated both of those entities dramatically over Army and other parts of the government that I've seen so far.
David, I really appreciate the insight today. Thank you very much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you.